I'm here with Dr. Layne Norton. I'm sure all of you guys know who he is. For those of you who don't know, I actually worked for Layne as his virtual assistant for 2.5 years from, I want to say like May of 2013.
We're 2.5 years back.
So it was a really cool experience and a lot of really great things have come from it. And since then, we've both done a lot of really fun things, and now we're here together at the ISSN Dallas seminar. I'm here as an attendee. Layne just gave a talk on weight regain, fat loss, all that jazz, so I'm going to ask him some questions about that. My first question for you is, what is the problem with weight loss?
Well, we don't really have that much of a problem with weight loss, to be honest.
Okay.
As a society, we're pretty good at it. 6 out of every 7 overweight or obese people will lose a significant amount of weight during their life. The real problem is, the research says it's impossible, not impossible. It says it's virtually impossible to keep off. If you're talking about 3-year weight loss statistics. So at 3 years, the amount of people who can keep off all the weight that they lost is about 5%, if not a little bit less than that.
So chances are slim that if you actually lose the weight, you'll keep it off over a long period of time.
That's right,
Yeah.
and a lot of it boils down to, there are some like underlying fancy physiological mechanisms, but a lot of the reason is just quite simply that whatever behaviors you had to incorporate to lose that weight, you have to maintain them in perpetuity, otherwise you're going to regain it. So if you think about the way a lot of people lose weight, they use completely unsustainable methods, or stuff that they kind of look at, okay, well this has a start date and an end date, and once the end date's over, they just go back to doing what they did before, and if you go back to doing what you did before, you're going to go back to
And then they're surprised, they're actually surprised when they gain the weight back, I found.
Yeah, well people think that like there's like once they lose it, that's like a lasting physiological stamp, you know. And the fact of the matter is, no, your body is trying to drive you back to what you were before.
Right.
Being lean looks great on a magazine cover, great at the beach, great in the bedroom. It's not great for survival.
Yeah, and also doesn't feel so great all the time either,
No,
especially when you're getting to like contest prep lean levels.
Yeah, most people aren't worried about that. But even then, if you're somebody who's trying to lose a lot of weight and you're creating a large energy gap over a long period of time, it is going to be difficult.
It's uncomfortable.
And especially for people who, you know, are overweight or obese, their behaviors are such that it's really going to take a large overhaul of their lifestyle in order for them to make changes.
Right. So it's never just one little thing they have to change. It's lots of little things, just a lifestyle overhaul, basically.
Yeah, I mean, there are a few hacks if you want, you know, those sorts of things, but the biggest thing is that, you know, you have to self-monitor. Most people don't self-monitor. You have to practice some form of cognitive restraint. And when we say cognitive restraint, we mean whether you're calorie counting, you're cutting out carbs, you're time-restricted eating, you know, those sorts of things. You have to do something, otherwise you can't create that calorie deficit. And then, you know, at a certain point, you know, it's trying to drive you back towards energy balance by lowering metabolic rate and those sorts of things. So in order to maintain it, you have to maintain whatever those behaviors and caloric amount are. Now, you can choose the means that you want to do that with, whether it be calorie counting, macro counting, time-restricted eating, but there has to be something. So, and then like one of the other big things is obviously exercise. People who maintain weight, they exercise a lot, or they exercise very regularly, and they don't snack. People who maintain weight do not do snacks. Snacking is actually one of the biggest problems because it's calories that people don't register.
Right, so it doesn't really do much for increase. It doesn't help with satiety much.
Right.
And I'm sure there are always going to be exceptions for people who do well with snacking, but I generally say I don't snack either. I do 3 meals a day and that's it.
Yep.
One term you used in your presentation that I want to touch on because I've seen people online actually get this wrong. They think it's the opposite. Metabolic efficiency.
Yeah.
So normally we say efficiency as if it's a good thing. In this case, why do we want to be more inefficient?
Well, when we hear the term efficiency, naturally we have a good connotation with that. We think, you know, fuel efficiency, monetary efficiency, those sorts of things. But when it comes to energy, your body fat stores are your body's energy reserve because the energy currency is ATP. Well, ATP is a high energy phosphate. You just can't store a bunch of ATP. It's not realistic. So we store it as triglyceride instead. which can be converted through ATP through oxidative phosphorylation and beta oxidation, those sorts of things. So ideally, if you have a lot of triglycerides you want to get through, you would like to be inefficient with your production of ATP, because if you're wasting ATP, if your body needs a certain amount of it, and you're wasting some of it, that means you've got to pull more from triglyceride out of your adipose tissue in order to make it. If we think about our body's adipose tissue, or body fat stores, as a fuel tank on a car, the faster you burn through that fuel tank, the quicker you get rid of body fat, those sorts of things. You don't want a Prius. You don't want a Prius that can go 80 miles on the gallon.
Right.
You want to be the 1975 gas-guzzling Chevy Suburban, right? So because you're going to burn through that fuel faster and burn through your fuel reserves, which is your body's adipose tissue.
Mm-hmm. So when we are shedding body fat and leaning out and in a calorie deficit for a long period of time, that is when our metabolic efficiency goes up.
That's right.
Yeah.
So whenever you're dieting, one of the ways your body tries to fight you and bring you back to energy balance and stop weight loss is by increasing its efficiency of ATP production.
Right.
So even if a lot of people had this experience, they say, I don't understand, I'm eating in a calorie deficit and I'm not losing weight. Well, you may have been what should have been a calorie deficit based on what is predicted based on equations.
Right.
That doesn't mean it's calorie deficit for you. So, and especially for people, if you start out at a certain level of calories, eventually what happens is you stop losing weight on that level of calories, right? We've all started out in the 500 calorie deficit, and you typically, the first few weeks, you lose just fine, and maybe it starts to slow down, but eventually it does plateau. And that is, again, people say, well, I'm in an energy deficit. I don't get it. No, you're not. Your body has gone back to energy balance because you're consuming the same amount of calories, so calories in is the same, but calories out is coming down.
Yeah.
And so you're having increased efficiency of ATP production, decreased thermogenesis, and not only that, but your hunger also goes up, and your body is trying to not only drive you back to energy balance, but drive you back to your original weight by increasing your hunger.
Right. So one of the things I really like that you said during your talk was how a lot of people think of calories in, calories out, energy balance as mutually exclusive phenomena, but actually they are very much intrinsically linked. You cannot separate them. One will influence the other.
That's right. And so people think, about these as independent variables that don't affect each other, and that's not the truth. They're intrinsically linked, as you said. If you consume more calories, you'll actually burn more calories. But if you're in a caloric surplus, even though you're burning more calories, the amount of calories you're consuming is still greater than the amount of calories you're burning, and so you can have net deposition.
Yes.
When you're reducing calories, when you're in a calorie deficit, you actually reduce the amount of calories you burn, but since you're still in a deficit, you're still losing fat.
Correct.
But eventually, your body will bring you back to balance, and that's where you either have to eat less, move more, combination of both, or you can institute some of these newer methods like diet breaks, those sorts of things. For some people, those seems to work very well. I like diet breaks even from just a psychological perspective.
Completely.
Most people, when they think about a diet break, they think of minimum a week at maintenance. But also, I think it's important to define the terminology, because people hear diet break.
They get scared.
What they think is, I'm just going to stop eating whatever I want.
Yeah.
And that's not what it is. You're eating at maintenance, which is not exactly a smorgasbord, right? So if you were, I think I read your contest prep blog, and I think you were consuming about 1,200 calories.
By the end,
But maintenance for you would have been 1,400, 1,500, 1,600 calories.
Right.
So that would have been a nice little break,
Right.
but it wouldn't have been something where you're like, oh man, I'm going to go out and have pizza and this and that.
I had someone commented on my Instagram the other day. They're like, well, I took a diet break and I gained 6 pounds. And I'm like, you probably didn't do it right if that's what happened. Yeah.
Exactly. So, and if you're worried about it, then err on the side of caution. One of the things this is kind of a side tangent, but Holly and I have talked about this a lot. We actually think that maintenance calories isn't even like a set point. We think there's a range of maintenance calories.
I think every day is different.
I think every day is different, but I also think, just from a perspective of, even if you control every variable, I think there's a kind of a low end of calories that you can maintain your weight on, and a high end of calories that you can maintain your weight on. So, for example, I maintain on about 3,500 right now.
That's good.
I think if
really
it's
good.
nice.
Yeah.
I think if I dropped to 3,400, I probably wouldn't have a whole lot happen, right? I think if I went up to 3,600, I probably wouldn't have a whole lot. Well, maybe not, because I think I'm probably edging on the upper end of the range, because I'm kind of slowly adding calories in. But yeah, it's very interesting because the body at a certain level just starts to dissipate energy. And this is, I think, what we see with reverse dieting where, we see people adding calories, in some cases not gaining body fat or even losing body fat. And, the criticism of me has been, well, you're saying that you're defying the laws of thermodynamics. That's not what I'm saying. Obviously, nobody's denying the laws of thermodynamics. What's happening is if somebody is not gaining fat or even losing fat while they're adding calories, either they were already in a deficit and are still in a deficit, or, well, they're still in a deficit. But what's happening is their body's compensatory response of energy expenditure must be equal to or greater than the level of calories they're adding. And I think for some people that does happen up to a certain point, obviously. But and then some people they tend to be more, they kind of put fat on kind of linearly.
And there have been studies on non-exercise activity thermogenesis and how for some people they'll start to fidget, and you said you can't purposely try and fidget more, but some people naturally have higher levels of NEAT. So when you increase their calories, they start having way higher levels of NEAT, so they end up not putting on as much body fat as other people who are in the same calorie surplus. So someone like me, I just be sitting here and just piling on body fat.
Yeah, and some people want to dismiss NEAT because it's just fidgeting. You fidget more, or you can walk. No, NEAT is it is non-voluntary movement.
Right. So I feel like a lot of people misinterpret. They're like, go on a walk. I'm like, that's not NEAT.
That's
when
not
you're
NEAT,
trying to get your NEAT up, that's exercise. That's not NEAT. So I really think people really get that confused.
About the only hack you can do for NEAT is get a standing desk. That's about it, I would say, versus sitting.
I hate those things.
That's about it. So I'll tell you what, maybe it's just because I'm so conditioned to sit. I'll stand up like every once in a while.
I'll be lying on the couch and working like this. I'm just like the opposite.
Better,
I can't focus.
But yeah, if you're trying to make yourself fidget, you have to think about doing that.
That's
so
no
now
longer,
now you can't, like, if you're trying to fidget and also write a book or whatever, like, it's not going to work because eventually you'll just stop doing this because you're focusing on this.
Right.
I don't dismiss NEAT as some of these other, like, I don't Schmal McSpartled has kind of dismissed a lot of the reverse dieting stuff and whatnot as well. If it is just NEAT. Well, NEAT is still part of your total daily energy expenditure. So I don't really care if it's basal metabolic rate or NEAT. Either one's fine for me.
Yeah. Would you say that a longer off season or just a longer period of time not dieting is better for long-term physique improvement?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think if you look at the people who, especially drug-free, who make the most improvements, competition to competition, typically they are not competing every year, and they are spending much more time at maintenance or in a surplus than they are in a deficit. What you're telling your body every time you're in a deficit is food is scarce, food is scarce, food is scarce. I think that was kind of the first time I'd ever presented it in the way I did today. I don't know if you've ever seen me do it that way, but kind of emphasizing the idea of a self-defense system. And that every time you diet, you're triggering that self-defense system. And the more times you're dieting, the more times you're triggering that. And just think about, why would your body want to lose fat if it thinks that, this is being a little bro sciencey, but if it thinks that, okay, famine is very common for us, we need to conserve energy as much as possible, we are going to be as efficient as possible with calories and energy. Of course that's what's going to happen. So I think when you spend more time in maintenance or in a surplus, what you're telling your body is, hey, energy is plentiful. We don't have to worry about this.
Right.
We can make it rain with calories. We can be more wasteful. And I think you've probably experienced this. Fat loss is a hell of a lot easier at the end of a long period of maintenance or surplus than it is after a long period of dieting.
So there's the physiological side, but also psychologically, people are a lot more ready to go. Their adherence tends to be a lot better too. Yeah. And one thing this reminds me of was Paul Ravella a couple years ago. He said his favorite type of client is someone who's never dieted before, because they're going to respond so well.
Easy. Yeah.
No dieting history tends to be so much more straightforward, less complications.
I'm sure your clientele was similar to mine in that you're dealing with a lot of people who have yo-yo dieted throughout their life, who very slow metabolisms in terms of their maintaining their body weight, a lot less calories than you would predict based on their lean body mass and fat weight.
Yeah.
And it's also very that population in particular is very difficult to convince them
Yes.
to, hey, dieting is not the best thing for you right now. Because I just want to get this 5 pounds off. I just want to get this 10 pounds off.
Right, and they don't understand that this is actually doing more harm for them.
And good, yeah.
Right.
And they're not going to get it off.
Yeah.
Because they haven't been able to so far. You know. So and the thing I always say to people is, if you want to keep getting what you've got, then just keep doing what you're doing. Sometimes that triggers them to think, and sometimes it doesn't. I had a very interesting case study with a girl who started with me, and she had a long history of yo-yo dieting. We started reversing her, or metabolic building, or whatever term you want to use, and from 1,200 calories to 1,800 calories, gained 30 pounds. And I looked at her food recalls. This girl,
and she was on.
And she would tell me, she was like, I'm so sorry, I had 50 grams extra of vegetables yesterday, this and that.
So she was very meticulous.
Very meticulous. Okay. From 1,800 calories to 2,800 calories, she lost 2 pounds.
So after that point, she lost.
Yes. So then that was over the course of another, 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
But very interesting. A lot of people will kind of give up on reversing early, thinking I'm just going to keep linearly gaining weight. And now she's dieting, and she seems to be coming down at a decent pace.
Wow.
We're doing diet breaks.
So what was the time period for this?
She was almost a full year.
That's
she
good.
was almost
That's
a
really
full year. You know, and I told her, I'm like, you have been very patient, and now you get rewarded with being able to.
It takes a lot of courage to do that.
Yes, it's very hard. Very hard. Yeah, because some people look at that and say 30 pounds of weight gain. I'm not willing to do that. But I had another client, her name was Gwen, and she put on a similar amount of body fat. Her calories actually didn't get up as high, but we've been dieting her for about 6 months, but it's been 2 weeks dieting, 1 week break. 2 week diet, 1 week break. 2 week diet, 1 week break.
Cool.
And she's back down to only 10 pounds above where we originally started with her, but she's on about 600 more calories than she was previously.
And that's substantial, especially for a female. That's a lot of food.
Yeah. She's never going to have a real robust metabolism. She's just not one of those people. But again, we got 2 more pounds to go.
Yeah.
So anything can happen. But I think she's going to be in a better place this time than she was previously.
Sounds like it. Okay, so I really like this because I feel like we're talking more and more about diet breaks lately in the fitness industry. It sounds scary for a lot of people, but hopefully with a lot of the newer research coming out, as well as the anecdotes about how people respond favorably to incorporating diet breaks, will convince more and more clients to be open-minded to hitting the breaks every now and then, even if it's just 2 days over the weekend or something to help with their long-term progress.
Now, some people actually lose weight during their diet break. It's like the stress comes off, and all of a sudden, they start dropping again. Or they'll do a diet break, kind of maintain, or just put on a little bit of weight, and then they start dieting again, and boom, they start dropping again. We don't know the underlying physiological mechanisms just yet. Well, there was one proposal, and that's a lot of the metabolic adaptation occurs in the first few weeks of dieting. If we could just let it go for a little bit and then curtail it by putting in a diet break, that we could kind of maintain some of our wastefulness, our adaptive thermogenesis, and then go back to dieting, even though you're losing weight and maybe you're just not triggering that self-defense mechanism.
So your body's like, this isn't so bad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, we just don't know yet. It could be something completely different.
Right.
But there still seems to be quite a bit of smoke in the scientific community. We're trying to figure out if there's a fire or not.
Right.
So hopefully there is.
You don't have to go super hard all the time. It's okay to take a diet break every now and then. And it may, the research is showing that it's actually helpful for you.
If you've got, 100 pounds of fat to lose or something like that, I think it's almost imperative that you put some sort of break in there, because just as a mental reward as well.
Oh, for sure.
To break up the monotony. So.
Yeah. This leads really well to my last question, which has to do with aggressive dieting. So I know a lot of people talk about how slower weight loss is always better, but I like to think that there are times when it actually aggressive dieting may be appropriate. I want to know your input. Are there times when it's okay to be a little more extreme?
Yes, especially obviously physique competition, those sorts of things. Like at a certain point, unfortunately, one of the side effects of me being so outspoken with bad coaching
You're so quiet. I don't know.
Now people think anybody who puts somebody on low calories is automatically a bad coach, and that's not necessarily true. I had a gal come to me one time and was like, "Oh, my coach put me on these calories, and he's obviously bad based on what you said." And I said, "Well," and I started getting some more context. I'm like, no, that's pretty much what I would have done.
Yeah.
You know, so as far as I know, Spencer's a big proponent of this, especially with obese people, getting some significant weight off quickly because it kind
especially
of
in the beginning.
incentivizes.
Yes.
I think there's probably something to that, but I guess my pushback against that would be is you're going to have to pump the brakes at a certain point. And then is that person willing to be patient at that point, right? Because they get a lot of weight off, and that can be an addictive thing where now they have an expectation that, I lost 15 pounds in a month.
Right.
And this month I only lost 5.
Right. And you'll see that actually in the more extreme example, in The Biggest Loser, when they do their weigh-ins, all of a sudden they're like, I only lost 10 pounds this week. And I'm like, that's amazing. And but they're so used to seeing drastic rates of weight loss. So I think having a really good expectation management is really important with clients.
I was talking about this with somebody today, and I said I think the number one thing is setting expectations with your clients, and just explaining to them. And even I'm guilty of, because it's all in my head, so I forget to tell them sometimes. And they'll say, "Hey, if I just had an idea of what the time course is going to be, that sort of thing." And so then when I tell them, it kind of sets them a little bit more at ease, especially with reverse dieting and that sort of stuff. Do I think there's times for aggressive dieting? Yeah, I think there's times for it, but I think we always have to keep in mind what is sustainable. And so you're going to have to pump the brakes eventually.
Right.
And so that needs to be a conversation with that person of literally, I'm going to say, I'm going to do this so you feel good and you're incentivized about your weight loss.
Right.
But we have to pump the brakes.
And it should be very structured with a plan, a post plan as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the big thing. Is a lot of times people give these really low calorie diets, people lose weight, but then there's no instruction afterwards.
Right.
And then they're
completely lost, and that's when they get themselves in trouble. So tell us a little bit more about your new book.
A lot of the stuff I talked about is in my new ebook, Fat Loss Forever.
Yeah.
It's almost 400 pages, and
very comprehensive.
Yeah, I think everything that I could think about, I put in there, and everything I came across, I was like, oh, should I put this in here? We put it in. So, if you're looking to learn how to lose fat, keep it off, and what you need to do to keep it off based on the scientific literature of the people that we know who do keep it off, this is the book for you. And even if you're a coach and you just want to learn more techniques and the physiology behind all this, I think it's a really great resource for people.
Yep, and I've looked through it. I very highly recommend everyone pick up a copy of this ebook. I think we all know where to find Layne. He's very outspoken. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, BioLayne for everything.
Yep.
All right.
And then BioLayne.com, and then for the new book, it's howtolosefatforever.com.
Okay, great. All right, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Zoe.